Have you ever wondered what happens when a divine promise is carried to its ultimate conclusion? When the strength of one man, fueled by the heavens, is not cut short by the weakness of the flesh. The story of Samson that we know is a tragedy, a story of lost potential, of a hero broken by love and betrayal. But what if Delilah's razor had never touched his hair? What if the secret of his monumental strength remained locked in the vault of his heart, sealed by his vow to God? Prepare yourself, for we are about to unveil a different chronicle, the saga of a one-man army who broke an empire. Before we dive into this storm of what-ifs, I want to invite you to join our community. If you are drawn to these grand tales of courage, faith, and power that have shaped our world, subscribe to the channel. Each video is a journey, and being part of our group is like having a map to history's hidden treasures. Click the subscribe button, not as a simple spectator, but as a fellow explorer. To understand the magnitude of our alternate history, we must go back to the beginning, to a time of silence and oppression. Israel was subjugated. The Philistines, a sea people with their iron technology and military organization, dominated the land. They were not just conquerors, they were humiliators. They imposed their culture, their gods, and their will upon a chosen people who seemed forgotten. Prayers rose to the heavens, but the answer seemed distant, muffled by the noise of Philistine chariots. It was in this desperate scenario that an angel of the Lord came to a barren couple from the tribe of Dan. The promise was impossible. They would have a son, but not just any son. He would be a Nazirite from the womb. Consecrated to God, 3 sacred prohibitions would shape his life: to not touch a corpse, consume nothing from the grapevine, and most crucially, a razor was never to touch his head. His name would be Samson, and his mission was clear. Declared by the angel, his task was to begin the deliverance of Israel from the hands of the Philistines. He would not complete the work, but he would be the explosive start, the spark to ignite the flame of rebellion. The story we know shows an impetuous Samson, guided more by his passions than his mission. His feats were legendary, yes. He tore a lion apart with his bare hands and killed 30 Philistines over a riddle. He set their crops on fire with 300 foxes, and in his most famous act of fury, he killed 1,000 men with a simple donkey's jawbone. Each act was a reaction, a burst of raw power responding to a personal offense. He was a solitary champion, feared, but not a liberator. He attacked the symptoms of oppression, not the disease. And then came Delilah. The love, the seduction, the venomous insistence that led him to whisper the divine secret in the lap of betrayal. The cutting of his hair didn't just remove his strength, it severed his connection to God. The result was humiliation. His eyes gouged out, enslaved at a mill, God's champion turned into entertainment for his enemies. His death, a suicidal act, brought down Dagon's temple, killing more Philistines than in his entire life. But it left Israel still under the yoke, with the deliverance tragically unfinished. But now, let's rewind the tape of destiny. Let's erase the scene in the valley of Sorek. In our timeline, something changes, not in Delilah's heart, but in Samson's heart. In our story, Samson still meets Delilah and falls in love. The Philistine lords, seeing this weakness, approach her with the same offer, silver to discover his secret. And Delilah, as in the original story, accepts. She presses him day after day with the same torturous question. Samson 3 times lies to her. He speaks of new bowstrings, of unused ropes, of weaving his braids into a loom. Each time she tests him, and he breaks free. It's here that our story diverges. Delilah's pressure continues, her tears and accusations, but on the night that he gives in the Bible, something happens. While Delilah sleeps, a tormented Samson walks out into the darkness. He looks at the starry sky and, for the first time, doesn't think of his strength or his revenges. He thinks of his mission, of the angel, the vow. He realizes Delilah's insistence is a deadly trap. In that moment of divine clarity, Samson feels not anger, but a cold resolution. He understands that to fulfill his calling, he must be wise, not just strong. He returns home before dawn. Delilah wakes and finds him watching her with an expression she's never seen. There's no more seduction in his eyes, but the glint of an unshakable purpose. She begins to press him, but he stops her with a powerful silence. He stands up and, without a word of goodbye, leaves the valley of Sorek forever. He leaves behind not just a woman, but the personification of his own weakness. The news reaches the Philistine lords. First, anger, then fear. Samson was free, and now he seemed different. His previous attacks were predictable, always tied to a personal offense, but now the champion of Israel was silent, and that silence was terrifying. Samson does not return home. Instead, he travels to the heart of Judah. He arrives not as an arrogant warrior, but as a Nazirite who finally understands his vow. He meets the elders and speaks of liberation. His strength, he now realizes, was not for show, but for a national purpose. The leaders of Israel are wary. They know his reputation. But something is different. The fury has been replaced by a controlled flame. He doesn't ask for an army. He knows that a disarmed Israel cannot face the Philistines. He becomes the army. But now he attacks with strategy. He begins to dismantle the infrastructure of Philistine power. Philistia was a pentapolis, an alliance of 5 city-states: Ashdod, Ashkelon, Ekron, Gath, and Gaza. This union gave them strength, and it was this union that Samson set out to break. His first target is the economy. The Philistines controlled the trade routes. Samson attacks the caravans. He doesn't steal, he destroys the goods, sowing chaos in the supply lines that enriched the lords. Patrols are sent, but they only find their own defeated soldiers, disarmed and humiliated, a message that Philistine power was impotent. The second step is their iron monopoly. The Philistines guarded the secrets of metallurgy. Samson finds the secret forges near Ekron. In one night he destroys the forges, bends the tools and renders the complex useless. He doesn't kill the smiths. He lets them live to tell the story. Panic sets in among the Philistine elite. Their technological advantage was being annihilated. The lords, desperate, unite their armies. A massive force marches toward Judah to hunt Samson. They camp in a valley, confident. But Samson doesn't meet them in the open field. He lures them into a narrow canyon. There he doesn't attack the army, but the mountain above it. He triggers a colossal landslide. Boulders and earth rain down on the army, crushing chariots and burying soldiers. The catastrophic defeat shatters the backbone of the Philistine military. More importantly, it breaks their spirit of domination. In Israel, fear turns to hope. Young men, inspired by his example, begin to form small guerrilla bands, harassing the Philistine garrisons. Now the one-man army turns to the Philistine leadership. One by one, he besieges the cities. In Gaza, he doesn't rip out the gates. He brings down the walls. He places his hands on the foundations and pushes. The ground trembles, and a section of the wall crumbles. The panic in the city is absolute. The Lord of Gaza surrenders. He repeats this pattern in Ashkelon and Ashdod. His reputation precedes him. The lords of Ekron and Gath, seeing the inevitable, send envoys to negotiate peace. They agree to withdraw, pay tribute, and free all Hebrew slaves. The 40-year oppression comes to an end. Samson, judge of Israel, rules for 20 years. But in our story, these are years of peace and prosperity guaranteed by their champion. He never becomes a king. He remains a Nazirite, a judge. He establishes a nation that is strong and confident in its divine covenant. He didn't just begin the deliverance, he consolidated it. The era of the judges reaches its apex. The need for a king might never have arisen. Samson, growing old with his hair intact, would become a living legend. The personification of God's faithfulness to a promise, the man who proved worthy of his power until the very end. This journey leads us to a reflection. The original narrative of Samson is a warning. It shows that the greatest gift can be squandered by a lack of discipline, by prioritizing passion over purpose. Samson's strength was not in his muscles, but in his obedience to the vow. When he betrayed that vow, he disconnected from his source of power. His story reflects our own fragility. However, the story we imagined reveals the limitless potential that exists when an individual aligns with God's will. It shows that the divine plan for us is not failure, but victory. What if Samson had been faithful? He would have been a testament that no empire can resist a soul consecrated to the Lord. Delilah's betrayal was not his destiny. It was a choice. That is the truth that echoes for us. Our greatest battles are fought within our hearts, in the choice between faithfulness and compromise. Samson's story, real or imagined, forces us to ask, what is our sacred vow, and what will we do to keep it? Thank you for traveling with us. If this story impacted you, leave a comment. We want to know which part affected you the most. And don't forget to share. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring.